Good morning, Algebra. Let's talk about solving quadratic equations by completing the square today. It's a beautiful day. It is sunny out. What better day to learn about completing the square? Okay, let's go for it. So, I've given you a worksheet, of course, and I think it's the 9-3 study guide that has several equations. And really, you're going to follow the same steps every time, all right? And you might not have to do the first step, but let me explain how we go through the very clear steps of completing the square. Completing the square means we're going to try to make one of these perfect trinomial squares, so that we are going to complete the perfect trinomial square by adding on that final c in ax squared plus bx plus c. So let's just look at how this works. Let's say I'm given an equation. Of course, with this equation, and then of course, honestly, with all of the equations on this particular worksheet, because these textbook people decided, I don't know, that you couldn't handle it, they gave us equations that we could factor. So in my world, I'd look at this, I'd factor it, I'd say, oh, plus 12 minus 2, right? Done, one step. However, let's use this to practice completing the square, and at the end of this, we'll look at what it looks like with something we can't factor. So I'm going to move this 24 to the right, so add 24 to both sides, and I'm going to leave a big space here when I write that. And the reason that I do that, and the way I write it on paper, although I haven't written it that way here, but I'm going to show you, is I leave that big space, and I'm showing you that I need to think about this and try to create a perfect trinomial square. So yesterday's homework was to create perfect trinomial squares. I'm going to think about this 10x. Okay, half of it squared is 25. So I can write that below here and show you that I did 10x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 24 plus 25 is 49. When I'm writing it, I write it out like this, okay? Let me erase these 25s here. Erase that line. And then I actually write in plus 25 like that, so that I make sure that I add it to both sides. Well, I probably would not write this step down here, so I would not write it. I would go straight from, oh great, I created a perfect trinomial square, factor it to a binomial squared, and then put whatever it equals on the other side. So I would not write that. In the examples that I gave you, I wrote all of that out. That's up to you, okay? So we're trying to create a perfect trinomial square over here, trying to create a PTS. Remember, you have to add any number that you add to both sides of the equation. Okay, let's take a look here. So if I have x plus 5 squared equals 49, I know that I can take the square root of both sides, right? And then I get x plus 5 equals plus or minus 7. And of course, if I subtract 5 from both sides, then x equals positive 7 minus 5 or negative 7 minus 5. So x equals negative 2 and negative 12. This is called completing the square. Let's take a look at how that works if I don't have an equation that factors. So I'm going to come over here. I'm actually just going to do a problem here. Do a different problem. So I'm going to take this 24 and make it into a 7 equals 0. Now I know that I cannot factor this. There are no factors of negative 7 that add up to positive 10. Okay, there are not any. So let me see here. I'm going to try to not have my shadow get into this too much. But let's see, I'm going to do the same step. So x squared plus 10x equals 7. So move that 7 to the other side. All right? And now I'm interested in making a perfect trinomial square on the left. And so we just found out that if I take half of b here, half of the middle coefficient, and I square it, then I get plus 25. And what I do to one side, I do to the other side, okay? So let's see, I've got x squared plus 10x plus 25. And so I've got this I'm going to factor. So x plus 5 squared equals, what is that, 32, right? 25 plus 7 is 32. Great. So now I've got x plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 32. All right, so let's see. I'm actually going to come over to this side now. So I've got this square root of 32. We know that the square root of 32, I can simplify that. 32 equals 16 times 2. So this is really equals plus or minus 4 root 2. So this is x plus 5 equals 4 root 2. If you need to review simplifying radicals, we can do that together, okay? So I've got, let's look at that better up here. X plus 5 equals plus or minus 4 root 2. That's terrible writing. Let's try this again, Mrs. McGlashan. X plus 5 equals plus or minus 4 root 2. I'm going to stick that 5 right in there. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I have x equals negative 5 plus or minus 4 root 2. And this is my answer. And you'll find that as we do, especially we're going to do the quadratic formula, that answers look like this. They're kind of weird, right? They're a number, plus or minus, a radical, sometimes over a fraction. So they're kind of weird, and this is their format. So this is what an answer looks like to a quadratic equation that you cannot factor. All right? So try this today, please, completing the square. Use everything we've learned. Good luck.